Have you ever looked around a crowded coffee shop, scrolled through your phone, and still felt entirely alone? You might think this deep ache of isolation is just a personal flaw, a bad day, or a byproduct of our fast-paced modern world. But 50,000 years ago, this specific kind of loneliness was flat out impossible. For 99% of human history, walking the Earth meant sharing the planet with at least 4 other distinct human species. Imagine a wild, raw world where you could look into the eyes of another human who shared your exact feelings, yet had a body built entirely for the freezing ice age, or a life spent on a tiny isolated island. They built fires, they cared for their sick, and they looked up at the very same stars. So how did we end up as the last ones standing? The dark truth behind their silence will change everything you think you know about survival, evolution, and what it actually means to be human. Let us piece together the clues left behind in the ancient dust. To find out what happened to our lost family, we have to follow a trail of cold bones scattered across the globe. For a long time, we believed our ancestors were the only ones who figured out how to truly master the wild. We thought we were special from the very beginning. But in 1931, near the banks of the Solo River in Negandong, Java, researchers dug up a series of thick, heavy skulls. They belonged to Homo erectus. These people were not clumsy half-ape creatures. They showed up on Earth nearly 2 million years ago. They had long, strong legs built for running down prey under a burning sun. They were the first true explorers leaving Africa to claim vast parts of Asia long before our own species was even a thought in the mind of nature. They mastered fire-shaped standard stone tools and built communities that lasted for well over 1 million years. Consider that for a moment. Our own species, Homo sapiens, has only been around for about 300,000 years. Homo erectus outlived our current record by 3 times over, yet they completely vanished. The Ngandong fossils show that the very last of them died out around 110,000 years ago. Dr. Jan Rizal and a team of international scientists spent years pinpointing this exact date. They discovered that Homo erectus did not fall to a grand disaster. Instead, the world simply changed the rules of the game. The open grasslands they loved began to shrink. Heavy rains turned their hunting grounds into thick, suffocating rainforests. The animals they ran down disappeared, replaced by creatures they could not track. They were built to run, but the world demanded they climb and hide. After 1 million years of perfect survival, this great giant could not pivot fast enough. They became isolated, their food supplies dwindled, and their long streak of luck finally ran out. While Homo erectus was fading in Asia, a different kind of human was completely dominating the frozen landscapes of Europe. These were the Neanderthals. For a century, we treated them like stupid, brutish cavemen who could only grunt and swing clubs. That mistake tells us more about our own ego than their actual lives. In 2010, scientists finished mapping the Neanderthal genome, and the results blew the scientific community wide open. Neanderthals were shorter, stockier, and packed with dense muscle. Their wide chests and large noses were perfectly engineered to warm the icy air of the Ice Age. They were tough enough to hunt massive woolly mammoths at close range using heavy spears. Their bones show healed fractures that look exactly like the injuries of modern rodeo riders. They lived hard, dangerous lives, but they took care of each other. In a cave in Iraq, archaeologists found the remains of a Neanderthal man who had been blind in one eye, had a crushed arm, and could barely walk. Yet he lived into his 40s. His group had carried him, fed him, and protected him for decades. They made jewelry, painted cave walls with red pigment, and buried their loved ones with deep respect. But by 40,000 years ago, they were gone. The old theory said that Homo sapiens marched into Europe and wiped them out through violent warfare. But researchers like Dr. Christ Vason have looked closer at the data, and the real truth is far more heartbreaking. Neanderthals did not lose a massive war. They lost a slow battle against numbers. They lived in tiny, deeply isolated groups of just 20 or 30 people, scattered across a vast, unforgiving continent. When you live in such tiny numbers, a single bad winter can destroy half your village. If a sickness hits, or if a few hunts fail back to back, your birth rates drop below the line of survival. Genetic studies show these late groups had very low diversity, meaning they were already fading from the inside out. Then the climate began to swing wildly, shifting from extreme cold to sudden warmth every few hundred years. The landscapes broke apart. Just as they were struggling to find their footing in a shifting world, our ancestors arrived bringing more mouths to feed and a different way of gathering resources. We did not have to lift a finger against them. We just took up space, and their tiny, isolated world shattered. The mystery deepens when we turn our eyes to Siberia. In 2008, inside the chilly Denisova cave, Russian archaeologists found a fragment of a pinky bone from a young girl. It was so small that it could have easily been swept away with the dirt. But when Dr. Svante Pääbo analyzed its DNA, a discovery that later won him a Nobel Prize, he realized this was not a sapien, and it was not a Neanderthal. It was a completely unknown human species, now called the Denisovans. We have almost no physical bones from them, just a few teeth and a jaw fragment found on the Tibetan plateau. They are literal ghosts in our history. Yet their genetic code proves they were incredibly successful, roaming across vast stretches of Asia. They adapted to life in high freezing altitudes where oxygen is thin. They lived, loved, and thrived for thousands of years, but like the others, they fade completely out of the fossil record around 40,000 years ago, leaving nothing but their silent code behind in the soil. Perhaps the most shocking clue of all was found in 2003 on a remote island in Indonesia. Inside a deep limestone cave called Liang Bua, researchers discovered the skeleton of a fully adult human who stood only 3 feet tall with a brain the size of a chimpanzee. This was Homo floresiensis, famously known as the Hobbit. They lived on the island of Flores, alongside giant Komodo dragons and miniature elephants. At first, many scientists refused to believe they were real, arguing they must have been diseased modern humans. But further digs proved they were a distinct species that lived on that island for tens of thousands of years. They made stone tools, hunted in teams, and survived by shrinking. When resources are tight on a small island, nature rewards the small because they need less food to survive. It was a brilliant strategy. But around 50,000 years ago, their tools and bones completely stop appearing in the dirt. On an isolated island, you do not need a world-ending catastrophe to disappear. A single bad generation, a volcanic eruption, or a change in water supply can wipe your entire universe clean off the map. Every single one of these species was smart, strong, and capable. They built worlds, loved their families, and fought for every breath. Yet one by one their fires went cold, and their voices were silenced forever. How do we make sense of this empty planet? When we look back at these cold fires and silent caves, it is so easy to fall into a dangerous trap. We like to tell ourselves a comforting story to help us sleep at night. We look at our cities, our technology, and our survival, and we assume we are here because we were simply better. We treat evolution like a straight ladder with other humans, as clumsy, unfinished steps, and ourselves standing proudly at the very top. We assume we were the smartest, the cleanest, and the chosen ones. But the hard science shatters that illusion. The truth is much darker, and it forces us to look in the mirror. We were not stronger than the Neanderthals. In fact, they were packed with dense muscle that could crush us in seconds, and their brains were just as large as ours. We were not more durable than Homo erectus, a species that outlasted our current existence by hundreds of thousands of years. We were not even better adapted to unique, harsh environments than the Denisovans or the hobbits. Individually, our ancestors were nothing special. Our true superpower was something completely different. It was not individual intelligence. It was connection. Homo sapiens possessed a strange, unique ability to build massive social networks. While other humans stayed trapped within their tight family groups, we did something unusual. We talked to strangers. We formed wide webs of people, tools, ideas, and information across hundreds of miles. Think of it like a storm hitting a landscape. The other human species were like magnificent ancient trees standing completely alone in a field. They were strong, but when the brutal winds of climate change and isolation struck, they had to face the shock all by themselves, and their branches snapped. But Homo sapiens, we were a vast forest, deeply connected beneath the soil. When disaster hit one valley, our network carried the weight. We survived, not because we were superior, but because we learned to lean on each other. So today, when we say the word human, we are only talking about ourselves. But being the last ones left is not a badge of honor. It is a historical scar. We are just the last surviving branch of a beautiful, messy tree that used to be full of life. This deep history carries a quiet truth for your life right now. If you are struggling with burnout, social anxiety, or the heavy weight of trying to survive this modern world all on your own, please remember this lesson from the dirt. You were never meant to be perfect, strong, or completely independent. Nature does not reward the lonely genius. The other humans were brilliant and capable, yet their fires went cold because they were isolated. We are here because our ancestors chose to reach out to share their burdens and to stay connected. Your need for other people, your desire to belong, is not a weakness. It is your ultimate survival software. If this journey through our shared past brought you a sense of peace or made you think a little deeper today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By doing that, you help build our own small network of curious minds. Let us keep sharing these deep stories and leaning on each other. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video.